Hello and welcome to PerchPeek Pods, the only place to get long-form interviews with some of the world's leading global mobility experts. And while we have a leading expert with us today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Yuki Watanabe, Head of Global Mobility and Travel at Delivery Hero, no less. Yuki, it's amazing to have you on the show. Tell us a little bit about how you fell into the wonderful world of mobility and your story.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me. Hi, I don't know. I think it's with anyone else. I fell into the mobility by sort of accident.
Yeah.
I would say I think it's an accident. So I started my professional career in a consulting firm. And my first job was really managing international tax, corporate tax. So nothing to do with expats, but one season, I had an opportunity to help out another team that was managing the expat tax returns.
Wow!
And that's how I found out there is even a field of expat services.
Yeah.
So I one tax seasons I helped out preparing expat tax returns for large corporations.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting, very different from corporate tax.
Yes. Wow.
And that's how I found my interest in mobility. So that was my first entry. Then a couple of years later, I wanted to make a switch from corporate taxes to international tax or / mobility tax. So I moved to a function in a company actually to specifically manage mobility taxes.
Yeah.
I spent many years managing expat tax returns, payroll consulting, process improvements projects, and after a certain time, I sort of got burned out. But I still like the mobility. I wanted to see the clients I worked with are usually the HR folks.
Yeah,
and I found it very interesting to look at the other side. So I wanted to have that experience managing mobility or experiencing managing mobility from a different side. So that's how I got outside of consulting and went into in-house.
Amazing. And I definitely want to jump into your in-house experience a lot. I've got to go back to that first sort of launch point into mobility though, and you sort of filing expat taxes was more interesting than regular corporate taxes. Not often, you hear people say that initially. People are normally like, I'm filing the taxes again. Tell us a little bit about what were the differences? What was it that you were finding interesting about the space right back at the start?
Sure. So the corporate taxes, I went into an international tax, which is very complex. It's very high visible, and of course, I worked at a very prestigious one of the big four a consulting firm. So corporate taxes is a lot of knowledge. As a new hire, that was a lot of learning. When it comes to expat taxes, it's smaller scale. It's all about the person. And you get to find out, even though you're handling, let's say, 1,000 expat tax returns, each tax returns are different. Some things are, similar, but you get to learn, okay. You find all these little things that seems funny. Right. It's like, you're trying to deduct these expenses. I don't know if that's actually legal.
Interesting.
And you get to find a little bit more about the person. Sometimes you find it a little bit invasive because you have to really dig into their personal situations to really make sure you're reporting the right income, deductions, everything.
I mean, isn't that, if you're not involved in global sort of like expat taxes at all, it is pretty nice. It's like you need to know every day, every item they've submitted. It is pretty personal at that point of view.
I know. And this was many years ago. So I I deliberately didn't say how long I've been in the mobility. So
Just a few
so
years ago. Yeah.
yeah. So I've had a long-standing
Yeah.
mobility career. So I will skip the naming the numbers of years.
Yeah.
But when I was managing taxes, this was way before the technology was really advanced. Right
Yeah.
now, it's like everything is digital. Back then, people were still sending in shoeboxes.
Wow. You're like, great, let me work through this and put your
Yeah,
taxes together. That's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah. In the US, it's I'm actually a certified accountant, so
Okay.
it's a CPA. We
Yeah.
used to call it cut, paste, and add.
Can't face the You're like, yeah, I'm pleased you worked so hard to make that work. And this is completely off script, but I did warn you
Yes.
we'd do this. I remember one of the first time we interacted, you sort of spoke about how you generated a lot of cost savings for your program just by being sort of knowledgeable about tax, and that makes complete sense based on where you started life. And we view this with lots of programs, often quite tax inefficient in terms of how things are set up. A lot of people listening to this will be global mobility leaders or reward leaders. What are like one or two areas you typically see organizations maybe not setting up their programs to be as sort of tax efficient as they potentially could be?
I think it's you definitely need to speak with your tax consultants or in-house tax team. And every country, every state is different. So what I saw as a tax savings in the US is slightly different when I moved to Germany. I'm currently based in Germany, so it was slightly different because the basic rules may be the same. So what you want to look at is you start from the assumption that everything is taxable, unless the tax office tells you it is not taxable.
Yeah.
So you need to understand everything is taxable. Then you have to really focus on what is not taxable. Then if it's not taxable, then how do you make your benefits, or how you deliver your benefits or support non-taxable? So for instance, I mean, it's a basic rule, but if you give people a lump sum, it's taxable, it's cash. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
But if you deliver the same, so if your lump sum is to cover, let's say, relocation travel, household goods, or something, then instead of giving them cash, give them that support and have that expenses directly paid to the vendors or something. In some ways, the delivery of the benefits could lead to your some tax savings, and separating employee versus families, because what the expenses paid for employees may be exempt, but usually not family. So if you're reporting everything in lump sum or lumped together as an expense, then you may be missing some tax savings there.
Yeah, what an absolute golden nugget, and I think is so often, and it can often be quite large. But if you're just treating it as fully taxable lump sum, you can get a lot more out of it and save a lot for the company not having to cover those costs for employees.
And same as immigration support as well. The visa is needed to employees, so if it's required, that cost may be exempt, but not the family. So things like that, that you need to really look at it. U.S. immigration is very tricky because it's really hard to separate. This is this is required by the employee, and this is not. So that might be a little bit tricky for U.S., but for other countries, immigration rules may be slightly less complicated. There might be some savings.
Yeah, but this is, I think, it's so wise is just to engage your vendors for this. I think something we see with a lot of our US partners or US clients is, if they have lump sum programs, it's like, everything's taxable in the US, whereas in Europe, it's normally not the case. So, and APAC often not either. So it can lead to some savings by not just, but by just sort of setting it up a bit differently, for sure. What a start. I want to go on to then, you took us as far as jumping in-house. This is when you start your journey at Gap. Tell us about your first in-house experience. What was the state of play when you joined, and how did it play out?
So this is truly the case of learning on the job. When I moved from consulting to in-house, the first in-house experience was actually a tax manager. So I went to Nike as a tax manager. Then I went to a different role in HR. Only when I went to Gap, I was truly the mobility professional. It was the mobility professional role. I unfortunately did not have a manager. So my hiring manager, when I joined, was no longer there. I had very little onboarding. I had no previous experience in running mobility program as an in-house expert. So I basically learned everything on the job. But I had a wonderful colleagues and suppliers who helped me through. But it's like a necessity is the invention, mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
So if you're forced to it, you really learn.
Yeah, exactly. And so tell us a little bit about what the program looked like at Gap, what exactly you were learning.
So at Gap, we had, there was domestic relocation, which was managed by, when I first took over the job, a domestic program was managed by another manager. I managed the international program, which included international one-way relocation into U.S., outbound U.S. From U.S. to other countries, and probably about 100 or so expats. Short-term, long-term, international interns. So variety of programs, but the focus was really on long-term assignments.
Okay.
When I joined, it used to be, Gap used to have a very large relocation department. They managed everything in-house. Around the time I joined, they went to a complete outsourcing model. So they went from 20-some relocation department to basically 3 people.
Wow, that's a full shift. And that was, so you were one of those 3 then, or 3/4 that came in. Wow. And obviously you joined sort of as after that decision had been made, but do you know why they had taken that decision at the time?
I think it was just a natural evolution of the operating model.
Yeah,
they really didn't need. At that time, they sort of had a satellite office where they had a lot of back office function there, and it was part of the effort to create a shared service center in a location where the labor was a little bit cheaper. So they built the shared service center in another state. The relocation department, I think I wasn't part of the decision making, so I don't know what the decision was, but it's they decided to go outsource instead of relocating all the function to another shared service center.
And
it
was crazy. Tell us, how was it?
It was I would say I was there from the beginning, from the implementation to everything, to hypercare stage. But I came in at the very tail end of the initial implementation. So it was a little rocky. I think it was too much of a shift from complete in-house to outsource. So from there, we went to more of a co-sourcing model. So it still heavily leveraged technology suppliers, but I eventually was able to build a little bit more team in-house to really manage the suppliers and really focus on employee experience. It wasn't perfect, but it was a little bit better.
Yeah. And so tell us what because I think this was a while ago, but I think the debate around sort of how benefits of co-sourcing in-house, fully outsourced. What were some of the challenges you saw in that almost like radically outsourced model? Like what was difficult about that?
The outsourced decision was, I believe that was purely financial. So the supplier decision and operating model was based on cost exercise, which is not always the best choice.
Yeah.
You obviously want to drive cost savings, but it really, what you get is what you pay for. So that was that situation. The RFP for the outsourced vendor was driven purely from a procurement side. So you know how that goes.
I can hear mobility leaders go, I know exactly how that goes. It's just going to be who can fill out the grid with the lowest numbers, and let's go with that.
Yeah, I think it puts a lot of pressure for vendors. Even though I wouldn't just say we picked the wrong vendor. I think it was just that with the price pressure, the vendors can also not provide the services they want, even if they have a capability. So it just doesn't do anyone any good.
Yes, and it's sort of there. It's like if it then comes out, okay, maybe employee satisfaction isn't where you want it, and then it's like, well, we could be providing additional support services, but you're not paying for it right now. So definitely appreciate that. How did you? It sounds like quite a tough position though, if they've taken this decision to sort of go to a fully outsourced model. It can be quite hard to sort of build back that team. You're almost saying, hey, maybe we haven't got this quite right. I think quite a lot of GM teams are in this situation right now where their team's been shrunk a lot in the last few years. I know this is a while ago, but how did you go about sort of persuading the business that maybe the team should be a little bit bigger and employee experience was actually, there was sort of return on investment on investing in the employee experience, so to speak?
I think back then, when we went from, so the first step was really moving away from, re-imaging the global mobility, because it was referred as a relocation department. So the whole focus was really relocation. Then, to build a brand as a global mobility department that can be a more of a vehicle to enable resources that business needs for across the world. And I was very lucky throughout the years when I was at Gap. There were plenty of opportunity to partner with business, opening of new locations, closing of different locations, and that involved a lot of people movement, and we became really more of a front in partnering with the business, because we really played a key role in it. And around the same time, we were also able to partner with with TA team that was starting up a international internship to bring junior designers.
Interesting. A classic use case for retailer.
Yeah, so that was an interesting. I mean, we were originally approached from housing. We're gonna do this. Can you provide some housing? Then we started managing a little bit more holistically. So each year we were involved a little bit more, not just the housing, but immigrations, and maybe bring in a little bit more of an experience for the business as well, to get ahead, because we started getting into immigration challenges with political environment a little bit changed. So we were that was also an avenue to raise the global mobility function to a next level. Once a certain political administration took place, it was very, very difficult to bring in talent. Or keep the talent
that was already on visas entirely. Yeah. And I've literally got a million questions. You can stay with me here. Tell me about that raising of the profile. Gap's a 100,000 person company, employee company. It's huge. Like, you're a small team, 5-10 people maybe. What were the actions you took to try and sort of build the brand as slightly more strategic rather than just that relocation function, as you mentioned?
It was, and fortunately, we were under total reward. So we were, we were we were attached to hips. Our team in the executive comp team was
Oh,
very
nice.
attached to hips. So on every executive, and we also had a lot of leadership changes as well. And we were in the very heart of that coordination, from the offers to relocations to
Yeah,
hypercare. So we were the function that was, I wouldn't say, we were on everybody's, the top of everybody's mind,
yeah.
but
You
we
had
were
lots of
one of the ones that everybody wanted to talk to if there was a new market entry or
yeah.
closing or any executive movements, because we moved a lot of people, even domestically as well.
Yeah, yeah, and it's I think that's what it took out of that was obviously raising the brand, trying to be a bit more strategic, but also just how many different use cases there can be for mobility to help with. New internship program, new office closure, senior relocations. There's so many like functions that you can touch as mobility, and it is
Yeah.
just like latching on and then being like, hey, look, and then almost using that to be like, hey, this is what else we can do as well. And actually, like, if you're sort of more like day-to-day domestic
Yeah.
relocations, or saying,
Yeah.
hey, this is why it's important.
And then it's true in any organization, but having that relationship with the leadership level
Yeah,
really helps. And very fortunately, many of the leaders back then had expat experience,
yes,
and so that really helped.
I love that as well. And like, because I think something that, often it would be CHRO or CFO who sort of ultimately mobility is going to roll up into. But if you're not sure who on the exec team is going to care about relocation, just look at your board on the website and check their LinkedIn and who's relocated, because probably quite a few of them have. And just sort of once you've relocated, you're going to be pretty passionate about the space because it is such a big sort of life experience. And I want to dig into this sort of where you ended up at Gap. So you mentioned it being a bit more of a co-source model where you're doing a little bit more in-house. What does that tangibly mean, doing a little bit more in-house? You're not
So
fully outsourced, you're not fully
yeah,
in-house at that point.
yeah.
Like, what does it mean?
So fully outsourced meaning, I mean, it has different, varying degrees, but
Yes.
you cannot outsource program management. So
Yeah.
you still need, even though the day-to-day, all the exception management, reporting, all of those, and downstream supplier, in-service initiation, managing the SLA, all of those can be outsourced to a RFC. So that part is outsourced. However, you still need to be on top of those. You can't always rely on, and 100% rely on RMC, especially on executive levels.
Yes.
So this is where, we may manage some cases in-house, although most of the tactical operations are outsourced. So that's what I mean by co-sourcing. And I always like to work with the suppliers as a partner, not a vendor. They're not. It's not. I don't actually like the term vendor. It's not a vending machine. You put a money in and you get something out of it.
Yes. Well, and the outside of not being a vending machine, which as the CEO of a vendor is much appreciated. What does being a partner really mean to you? Like, if a Global Mobility is listening to this and thinking, oh, is that just like fluffy language? What does that actually look like, being a good partner rather than just transactional?
I think it's open communication. Trust really needs to be built on open communication, honesty.
Yeah.
Mistake happens. I don't think, we make mistakes, suppliers make mistakes. It's fine. Just don't hide it. Be proactive. Proactive communication is a key, and try to come up with a solution together. Even though the accountability versus, like blaming somebody if somebody doesn't go right. It's a different thing. So, make sure you have preventive measures. If something happens, communicate so we can tackle it together.
Yeah, I love that. I think that open communication is so key. Something we were definitely bad that at PerchPeek at the start. We just wanted to be like, everything's perfect. And then but likewise with clients, it's like, you've got to be honest with each other and say, hey, this individual thing happened, or this process isn't working. And I think that is sort of, they're such integrated partnerships. That is such good advice.
And same thing, if the company always tries to get the best fee or the money out of the suppliers. Things change on both ways. If the supplier is not able to meet, deliver the services based on the fee that they agreed, they need to be realistic and they need to be honest about it and have an open conversation. And sometimes that means, they need to end the relationship, but that is better than suffering and, failing.
Yes. And just sort of magically hoping something's going to get better or change. And it's like actually just being open and saying, hey, maybe we're not the right partner for you anymore. If this is, for XYZ reasons. And
or it's like, we can't do this at this price, but just have some other alternatives. So I've had this conversation with multiple suppliers. Okay, we have budget constraints. This is how much money I have. This is what I want. If you can do this, what can you do? It's like, with this money, what can you provide?
No, and I sort of, it's sort of like, hey, be creative. Don't just say no. Say no, but what about this? And maybe it doesn't get 100% of what you want, but here's why we think it would be really great. Or can we? And be creative with that problem solving. I love that. We've got to go on to your own relocation. So you had this legendary run at Gap, built up such a respected program there. Then you decided to leave it all behind and move to Europe to take on the role at Delivery Hero. Tell us about why, how that came about. Just what went into that decision.
It's I think when I said the short answer is why not. So we only live once, so why not try it? And the COVID really pushed me to that decision, because it's, I love to travel, but everything was closed during COVID, and none of us are getting any younger. So if I don't do it now, when will I? So if I don't like it, I can always come back. There's nothing to lose. So there's a certain, there's a certain risks to it, but it's leaving everything behind. But at the same time, it's not. It's not the end of the world.
Exactly. And like, worst case, you do it for a bit, you go back, you're still connected with everyone. It's like that nothing really changes. Tell us, this is again very off script. So you sort of knew that you wanted to relocate and started looking at potential roles, or the role at Delivery Hero came up and you were like, oh, actually, I will move for that. Which way round was it?
So I was looking to go somewhere for several years, but one thing or after another, and none of them really pan out, for different reasons. So after COVID, I got really serious, and I was looking either Asia or Europe, but Asia was pretty much out of the question because it was nothing was open. So Delivery Hero role came up and said, okay, that's interesting. Germany wasn't, Berlin wasn't really on my map, but it's a progressive city. Why not? And the job really sounded exactly what I was looking for. I spent many years in more of a very structured environment, large, relatively bigger programs, in a very settled environment. So I wanted to try a different industry, smaller program, something that I can get my hands dirty in.
Nice,
So
go start the building process. You're like sort of actually build it almost not 100% from scratch, but really be like putting in the building blocks of the entire program rather than sort of inheriting something that's already there.
And what made me decide on that role was really the people I met through the interview.
Yeah.
Company, the role is one, but it's really the people. I wasn't going to make the move for just the role and hated the
Yes.
people. I really
Yes.
wanted to make sure I am happy in an environment that I'm going to be working in.
Yeah, and that's so awesome that you made the jump, and I think it is when you're in this industry, it's awesome if you can find a way to make that happen. And yeah, I'd like look for roles abroad because it's particularly at the leadership level like you are. People will relocate you to find someone with the right experience, right? And it makes complete sense. Tell us then, you landed in Europe during the pandemic. You're a very sort of knowledgeable sort of. Part of the global mobility community here in Europe now. How would you compare the global mobility community in Europe versus in the US?
Very different. It could be partially because it's Germany as well.
Yeah.
In the US, it's very open, very active, especially Bay Area. You have communities everywhere.
Yeah.
Formal, informal. In Europe, it's almost that you have to be invited. You have to know someone, and lately I think it's changing. When I first came, I really didn't find anything. I was really looking for something to connect. I have no friends. I don't speak any language, so I have no family, no friends, and the office was open, but nobody was going in. So it was very difficult to establish the life. But and the network would have been very helpful, but it just wasn't existing. In Berlin market, I think there are a lot of startups, but they're not established mobility professional running the program. Maybe there are, but there are probably not as many as the Bay Area or in some larger cities in the US.
Yeah.
It's changing though. It's changing.
It is changing. And I think it's, historically it's been more of a talent acquisition, one-way transfers, often just driven through TA rather than necessarily a more structured program with some of the traditional assignments that, a lot of mobility programs sprung up from. You actually see some decently high volume programs that maybe don't even have a global mobility leader. It's just which is sort of an interesting dynamic. How have you found that moving from a program where you had quite a lot of traditional expat assignments to presumably at Delivery Hero, a bit more of a focus on permanent transfers in there? Like, what are some of the differences between the nuts and bolts of the programs?
Mm-hmm. I think it's there's a fun. And it's very exciting to be able to build some structure or, put more structure around it. And because it's a smaller company and a young company with a very entrepreneurship in spirit, it allows you to be very experimental.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to, some things can move really quickly. If you have a good idea, you can run it by a few people and, voila, you can
get it going.
You can get it going and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you can take it away. So it's easy, and it's a very easy environment to try something small, even if it's small. While in a larger company, you really have to vet it. You have to have a lot of data to socialize. But then, it's a very structured, so it has a long range view. So it's a very different program. How you look at the program, and it depends on the demographic. That approach, the traditional approach, will probably fit for the demographic that has more of a traditional assignments, maybe not traditional, but more assignments. It needs a little bit more planning. You can't just change it, every 3 months. But for the population we have, now we're starting to change a little bit, because now in 2-3 years ago, it was very large volume, just one-way move, young engineers just, move with just a couple of suitcases.
Yes.
It is changing the demographic. We're starting to see a little bit more assignments, more senior people coming in that are expecting more support. Than just flights and here's some money and support, just go ahead and move.
Exactly. Why not? But I love that nugget there as well of like actually sort of the higher volume permanent transfer population
Yes,
is a perfect place to experiment because they
is there?
move once and to a certain extent it's like you can sort of test and learn a bit faster than assignments that need more
Is there?
planning and a bit higher stakes and
Is there?
if they're on assignment they're coming back so you can't change things too much in that time.
Is there?
I could speak to you forever about your experience at Gap and at Delivery Hero, but we'll save some Delivery Hero for next time because we're rapidly coming to time. And one of the sort of traditions we have on the podcast is asking a question, or the previous guest leaving a question for the next guest. And I've got a really nice one today in that I think there's been quite a bit of, negative sentiment in the mobility industry over the past couple of years. First with COVID, then obviously lots of layoffs, lots of teams becoming smaller. If we put that negative sort of macro to the side, what's good right now in global mobility? Where are you excited about for the industry?
I think it's a very interesting time to tackle the remote work.
Yes.
It's a headache for everyone. And it's been a topic. It's not a new topic, but it's been a topic. But it's an interesting phase that you're starting to see the trend, and I'm very curious to see where a company will go from here. Because with COVID, everybody was remote. Then after COVID, it was allowed a little bit more because people got used to so much flexibility. So they had to, company had to keep it. Now they're starting to bring people back in the office and employees are not happy. So companies are, struggling to balance it. So I'm curious to see where the company is going to end up. It's kind of like, like years and years ago, everybody wanted to do a unlimited vacation. And you don't hear that anymore.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like it's sort of
some do.
Some do, and it's great when it works. And we actually do it at PerchPeek, and it's been good for us, but it's definitely not a panacea. And you often see it. People take less holiday, and you can sort of imagine a similar thing with flexible working, where we haven't really seen some of the downstream implications of it yet. But that battle is on, and that's exciting for mobility because you're sort of right at the heart of that. Like where people work has big compliance, tax, immigration, it's perspective. So good opportunity. What a wonderful place to stop, Yuki. Thank you so much. I can't believe how quickly time's gone, and such an interesting journey through sort of just two such fascinating in-house programs in particular. So thank you for bringing such wonderful spirit and energy to the podcast, and I know the community is going to love this one. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Cheers, Yuki. Bye bye.
Okay, bye.